What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Pond Hoppin' TV. Yesterday it was super nice. I actually got the video posted last night of me fishing yesterday. Caught like 6 or 7 or 8 or something fish total. So it was actually the first like decent day that I've had this year. But the weather was really nice. The water's finally starting to somewhat warm up. I actually got in the water barefoot and it's still like really cold, but it's starting to warm up a little bit. So basically, it's raining today. I woke up today and it's pouring rain. I think it's going to be raining pretty much all day. I think it's going to rain tomorrow also. So I can't really get out and go fishing. But I figured I'd give you guys just a nice little tips or informational video. So I'm going to share with you guys basically how I approach fishing a pond, at least here in Nebraska, how I approach fishing a pond, and some tips that I have for how to go about it and how to up your chances of catching more fish when you're fishing in ponds. So I'm pretty much just gonna get kicked right into it. So basically, the first thing that I do, and let me just add real quick. This might not be how you approach it. This might not be how you've ever approached it. This is just how I approach it, and this is just what my tips would be to you guys to help you guys out catching more fish and become better bass fishermen. But like I said, there's so many people that are so much better at bass fishing than I am. But this is just how I approach it, and these are my tips to you guys. So basically, where do I start? When I first get to the water, basically what I'm doing when I first get to the water is I'm already scoping out kind of the hot spots, as I would like to call them. A lot of times it's going to be a bunch of laydowns in the water, a bunch of cattails. Sometimes the ponds that I go to are half the pond is just completely surrounded by cattails, which is great. So basically, I'm going to be scoping out the hot spots to begin with. After that, what I'm going to be doing is basically just rigging up, getting what I think is going to work. Most of the time, I'll take 3 poles with me. Most of the time, I'll have a nice, a faster moving bait, like a. So I got some camera difficulties there. Anyways, a lot of times I will, just throw a faster moving bait, like your spinner baits, I'll rig up a spinner bait or a chatter bait, a swim jig, a lipless crankbait, a square bill crankbait, just something like that that's a little faster moving. And then that'll be on a bait caster. On my second pole, which will also be a bait caster, I'll usually rig up some kind of like a punching bait, like a cross style bait, a beaver style. You saw me fishing with those yesterday. Doing really well with something like that. Maybe a Senko, a brush hog, something like that. I'll usually have rigged up. And then on that third pole, which will usually be my spinning combo, I'll have something hooked up, just a little more finesse. Maybe just a Ned rig, finesse worm, something like that. So basically, once I get all that stuff rigged up, pretty much what I'm going to do right away is I'm just going to grab that faster moving bait. My go-to, like I've said in a previous video, is a lipless crankbait. So that's usually going to be my go-to. Whether it's a lipless crankbait, a regular crankbait, a spinner bait, chatter bait, whatever it is, I'm just going to grab that and I'm just going to start covering the banks of the water and just casting parallel in the bank, just covering water and trying to locate those fish and cover a lot of water doing it. So basically, if I get out there and I'm paralleling the bank and I'm just throwing that bait over and over and over and I'm not finding anything, pretty much then what I'll do is I'll get into the nearest group of say laydowns or cattails or grass or moss or whatever it is, and I'm just gonna grab that punching bait and I'm just gonna start flipping it in there. Another reason why I always have a nice like punching rig or Senko or something hooked on is because like yesterday was a prime example. I was walking along that bank and I saw that fish come up for air and wake a little bit on top of the water, and I just pitched that beaver cross style punching rig, whatever you want to call it, just pitched it right in there, and and caught him right away. And the good thing about pond bass fishing is sometimes it takes you a little while to find the fish, but a lot of times when you do find the fish at a pond, a lot of times there's going to be a lot more fish in that area. Just like yesterday, I fished that pretty much the whole one half of the bank, that pond. Finally got down to that group of cattails, and there was a little pocket back in the cattails. I caught about 4 or 5 fish out of that little pocket. Just that little, probably 10-yard diameter pocket back in those cattails. So that's a good thing about ponds. So basically that's what I'll do is I'll throw that moving bait in the open water and really try to locate fish. If I locate fish, great, I'll keep casting there. And then when I get to some cattails or some grass or weeds or whatever, I'll pitch my my punching bait around in there a little bit. And then basically the only other tip I'd have for you guys is maybe if you know you're going to a like a real mossy pond, make sure you have like a frog tied on or something. You don't want to really miss an opportunity like that. A lot of times these ponds in Nebraska that I go to are just really moss covered, and then I always make sure I have a frog tied on. Yeah, basically that would be my tips for you. So really, tip number 1 would be to, when you first get there, scope out the water. Find the spots that are going to look good. A great thing to do is actually to look at like Google Maps and get a good vision of an overhead and aerial view of the water, to really get a good idea of where the fingers coming off are going to be in maybe a cove or something like that. But yeah, my first tip would be right when you get there, make sure you scope out the water, find the hot spots, because usually my tip to you guys would be, when you get to a pond, and this is just how I approach it. You can approach it however you want, but this is how I approach it. When I get to a pond and I scope out those hot spots, I usually never just go right to those spots that I think are going to be good. I usually fish my way to those spots, and those are my last spots, because those are the spots that I think I can for sure catch fish. So I usually fish my way to those spots, hopefully pick up a couple or few bonus fish on the way, and then when I get there, then really hit those hot spots. Another tip I would have for you guys is that if you just like yesterday, where I caught a fish out of that little pocket, if you catch a fish out of one little area, don't just assume that that was the only fish sitting in there. A lot of times, if I catch a fish in a little area, I'll cast right back in that same exact spot 5 or 6 more times. And if I don't get a bite, then I'll quit. But like yesterday, I caught 3 out of that one spot, and I had a 4th one that I actually missed twice out of that same little spot, actually off the same point of cattails. They all hit right at the same exact spot. So that'd be my another tip. If you get hit or you catch one, don't be afraid to just pitch it right back in there where you caught them, because a lot of times there's going to be a school of them sitting right in there. But yeah, basically, so tip number 1, find the hot spots when you get to the pond. Tip number 2, have 3 poles rigged up, have a nice fast moving bait, chatter bait, spinner bait, lipless crank bait, swim jig, swim bait, whatever you want. And then have another pole rigged up with like a punching bait, like some kind of beaver, craw, brush hog, just a flipping bait, something like that. And then I just always have that 4th pole rigged up with like some kind of finesse rig. You never know when those fish are just going to be real finicky, and you're just going to have to pull out the finesse rig and fish real slow. So that'd be tip number 2. My tip number 3 would be to just make sure you cover water with that moving bait and look for fish. Fish your way to the hot spots, and then when you get to those hot spots, or if you get to like cattails or laydowns or brush or something, start pitching that bait in there. And then my tip number 4 would be, when you do find the fish, don't be afraid to just fish that one spot the whole rest of the day. I've had so many times where I've gone out fishing, and I just didn't catch anything for like an hour being there, and I covered most of the pond, and finally I get to like one little 20-yard range of like cattails and laydowns and stuff, and I just catch like 10 or 15 fish out of that one little area. I mean, you just never know. So make sure you just keep at it. My last suggestion would be, usually I try to stay somewhere for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And if I don't catch anything within that time frame, I'll usually move to another pond. But I think the longest I've ever stayed somewhere, I've stayed places for like 4 hours before and not caught a single fish. But usually I'll stay for, an hour or two, and if I don't catch anything within then, I usually move spots. Like I've said in a previous video, don't be afraid to have multiple spots in mind to go to, just in case the first spot or second spot or even third spot don't work out. So thanks for tuning in to Pond Hoppin' TV. Those are my tips for you on pond bass fishing and how to fish ponds, my approach to it. And just thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as usual. And I will have more videos to come. Once this weather gets warmed up, I will start rapid firing the videos at you guys. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you tune in all the time. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Peace.